What is Abraham learning over all this time? He's learning what we've already seen earlier in Genesis. He is learning what was described of Adam, what was described of Enoch, what was described of Noah, what was described of all the men of faith. He is learning how to walk with God. And that is the only goal that God has for his life. Yes, God's going to use his life in these stunning ways later, but the only goal God has is that he would learn to walk with him by faith. What does that mean? Walking with faith looks like stuff like this. It looks like following God when he asks us to do something, following the call he has on our life. It looks like receiving the things that he brings. Over and over again, God allows things to come into Abraham's life that Abraham is like, why did you allow this? And we are the same. Abraham has to learn to receive these things. The God who called me has allowed this thing to come into my life. I receive it. I'm going to choose to rejoice in it. I'm going to choose to believe that God is going to use this thing, even if it's a bad thing, like being terrified of Pharaoh coming to kill me. I'm going to choose to believe that God will use it for good. I'm going to believe that God will fulfill all of his promises, and I'm going to believe it no matter what things look like. And here's the thing. God's plan for Abraham worked. It worked. By the end of his life, this is the last text we'll look at today. By the end of his life, Abraham has become a stunning person of faith. I'm going to read the story of him being tested with Isaac, and don't get too caught up on the fact that God is asking Abraham to go sacrifice his son, okay? Don't get too caught up on that. It has to do with lots of stuff in the Bible, lots of stuff in that culture. What I want you to think about as we read this is a horrible thing comes into Abraham's life, a horrible thing. And what is Abraham? Abraham is able to believe in that moment that God will use it for good. What if you had faith like that? What would you be able to accomplish in your life? If when that next thing that comes into your life, there is a next thing coming that's going to terrify you, if you were able in that moment not to just be destroyed by that, but to trust God, to be able to say, I actually believe that God is going to use even this thing for my good and to fulfill his promises in my life. Toward the end of his life, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham. And Abraham replied, I'm here. I'm listening. Then God said, take your son, Abraham, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He went to do it. Do you think he told Sarah? I think there's absolutely no way he told Sarah. Absolutely no way. He took with him two of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. It's a mountain, and the region of Moriah is now the current region of Jerusalem. The mountain that he goes to is the Temple Mount today. It's where Solomon would later build the temple. It's where the Dome of the Rock is right now in Jerusalem. He saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, stay here. Stay here with the donkey while I go with the boy. We go over there. We're going to worship, and then we'll come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. So Isaac is carrying it on his back. And he himself carried the fire and the knife, and the two of them went together. Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, Father, yes, my son, the fire and the wood are here, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, and maybe this is the core of the text. The core of the text is not that God asked Abraham to do this. The core of the text is this. Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb. Abraham believes that God will do something good. We're later told in the New Testament that Abraham reasoned that maybe God can raise the dead. even if he had to do this as an act of faith, God could raise his son from the dead and still fulfill his promise. In the face of hopelessness, absolute hopelessness, the dream is dead, Abraham is able to believe, no, God's still going to do it. God is still going to do it. But it's impossible. God's still going to do it. The two of them went on together. They reached the place. Abraham builds an altar. He arranges the wood. He puts Isaac on it. He reaches out his hand, and he took the knife to slay his son. But the angel stops him. God also, of course, here reveals his character. To us, some of this might be like, why would God ask him to do this? Many of the gods of the Middle East asked their worshipers to do this. We've talked about before the burning of children in the fire to Molech. This was a common practice, human sacrifice. One of the things God is doing in this section is showing Abraham what kind of God he is and what kind of God he is not. He is not a God that's going to ask you to sacrifice human beings. But he also shows us something later, which he's already shown Abraham, that he is the kind of God who is so committed to us and his promise that he, not us, but he is willing to give up his own son to save us.